Little NBA Open for you. A bunch of different thoughts, a bunch of different directions. So we're not going to title this as anything. Philadelphia, Miami. Let's start in Philly. 9-2 start, Sixers. Do you want me to share my moments along this journey? Sure, I will. The Miami offense, I'm like, all right, cool. Post All-Star break, shockingly, the offense was 18th. I thought that was high for Miami. Their defense is second. They were 16-11, winner on the over-unders for the second half of the season. But that part of the game, I'm like, all right, Miami probably isn't going to have enough offense to be able to hang with Philadelphia. Bam gets his second foul. Second one. First foul was a good foul. Second foul was a bullshit call. So I was like, all right. I felt like Embiid, it's weird. Between Embiid and Trey being out in the officiating revival, all my hard work, I was like, because they didn't play during it, does that mean they were given some sort of exemption from some of this stuff? So at the beginning of the game, I'm watching it going, all right, this is not good for Miami. Bam comes out of the game. Miami goes to zone. Philadelphia cannot solve the zone. They cannot stop turning the basketball over. Kevin Love, we may have had him on. We have made call. If Miami had won this game, we may have changed the name to the Kevin Love podcast, Zone Defense. How hard that guy worked his ass off just to try to muck up the Embiid part of it, where it must have been like 2020, 2021 flashbacks from Embiid not being able to get an entry pass. Then we ended up on a 43-23 Miami stretch. Miami mucking it up once again. Up at the half. Let's look at the stars. Embiid didn't shoot it well. Maxey was 6 of 16. Butler had a bad night, which we'll debate here in a little bit. Tyler Hero started 4 of 19. He ended up 9 of 27. Like, how did anyone win this game? Well, that's because of the 76ers bench. Bench mob in the house. Third quarter, huge for them. Batum, 20 points in 28 minutes, hit a bunch of big threes, and the Sixers win this game. Across the board, all the stars, if you look at the box scores, you're like, what was going on there? And we knew that there was a moment where Jimmy Butler looked like he really hurt himself. He made the free throws. He was messing around with his knee. He stayed in the game. And you're like, well, there was stuff in the regular season where I felt like Butler was deferring a bit too much offensively. Is that what's happening here? Or is he hurt? And now we know this morning he is hurt. And Miami is not going to have him for a couple of weeks or one more game. So not great there. I thought Embiid looked rough. To be expected. A couple big plays there at the end. The overall game is not what you're looking for. I don't know that we can expect. Like, I'm going to be fair about it because clearly there's an injury part of this, post-injury. But whether it was him not having enough to get set up consistently to be a better threat offensively or the team not doing a good enough job around him, I just think he's somebody that needs to be set up a little bit more than the other superstars to then dominate. He cannot dominate the way some other players can dominate, crossing half court, bringing the ball up, and going, I'm just going to get into my stuff. But clearly not optimal situation for him after the injury. There's something I do want to bring up, though, here in regards to Batum, because it relates to Klay Thompson. And I have a little bit on the Warriors at the end of this. But when I think of how bad Klay looked in the Sacramento game and how bad he's looked at different stages of this season, also realizing that you may have missed that consistently, like towards the end, he was pretty good. There's even some months in there where I think if you were watching it, you're like, I don't know how good he is. And the numbers still end up looking okay. It's like a Steph Curry shooting slump. And then you look at the overall numbers, you're like, I'm supposed to be mad about these splits. Like, this is bad. Well, yeah, it's bad based on the standard that you're held to. And Klay's definitely held to a high standard. And it looked physically bad a bunch of different times. And now that he's a free agent and the Warriors end the way they do, you're like, okay, what is he worth? If you believe like, oh, Klay cost himself a ton of money, or if they had lost a close game or Golden State's still alive to get into the playoffs and Clay went for 30, did he make himself all this money? I think both are kind of irrelevant. I think Clay's still going to get paid a lot of money because he's a guy with incredible pedigree, with a very, very valuable skill for teams that will have cap space that don't know where else to spend it. And he's probably still going to get a pretty significant number. And we'll see if Golden State wants to play with that kind of number. But the reason I bring up Clay is that there's just a lot of people that thought he was washed at certain points this season, washed with the way that they exited. I've thought that about a bunch of players. And there's a bunch of players that end up proving me wrong because they're older and I'm like, oh my God, that guy looks terrible right now. There's something going on. There's been going on, I don't know how long, but there's something going on right now in the league where there's just a list of players. Like Batum, I remember when I saw him with the Clippers at the start of 2021. He's only 32 years old then. So I think he was like mid-30s now. And Batum was doing the swing the ball, so it looks like I'm doing something, but I'm not really ever doing anything or threatening the defense in any possible way. I'm just kind of like out here getting a little sweat. And at 32, he was still too young to maybe be washed, but I was like, this doesn't look very good at all. And guess what? We're talking a couple, 3 years later, he's still contributing. He was actually important to the Clippers. Defensively, he's at least big enough to stay in position, and he still is a threat, and he gets the shot off so quickly. Like he'll catch it kind of from the side and then swing it in to his shooting stroke, like from the side and then up off of the catch. There's times where he shoots it so quickly. I'm like, why do you actually want to go that fast? And he looked like he was done. I don't know if there's a French thing going on there. So the next French guy that looks like he stinks, go get him, because Batum and Boris Diaw towards the end of Charlotte looked like he was going to be like forced out of the league. Clearly he didn't care there. And he wasn't even that old when he was there at the end of it. I think he was late 20s and it looked like he was done. And his skill was so specific. It was different for somebody that big, that was that good with the basketball and that good of a passer. That was always the thing about him in his draft. And then he actually provided really valuable minutes to San Antonio for years after that. Kyle Lowry, I kind of think he should be banned from the league. I think when people say I'd pay to watch that guy, I think there should be a Kyle Lowry Foundation that cuts me a check or Venmos me for having to watch some of it. But if you're just going by the standard of what does this acquisition cost us? Not really that much. Could we trust him out there for playoff rotation minutes? Hell, if things fell apart and he had to be the closing five, could we at least trust him? Maybe he hits one big shot. We know he's probably going to get a couple bad calls in there because he's so crafty and so good at it. He tried to fall down twice on the inbounds pass last night. Maybe fouled the first time. Don't think he was fouled the second time. Yeah, there's probably some value there to go ahead and do that. PJ Tucker, when he was with Houston in 2021, I mean, he had, I think the number was like based on 500 plus minutes, the worst possible overall plus minus that anyone could have in the league. He had it, but there's a specific role for him. And with the history of who he's played against, how tough he's going to play. Jeff Green, we know he's the GOAT, the Billy GOAT. That's why, like, hey, Russillo, what's up with the old guy love today? Is that something you want to tell us about? No, it has nothing to do with me. It's just that don't be in a hurry to write off all of these guys, because I know I have like this internal list of going like, I think that guy's toast. And then guess what? At some other point, he'll provide value. Something to think about when Clay enters free agency. So the other thing that I want to touch on is Chicago and Atlanta, because that was the other game last night. A lot of people, because I didn't like the concept of the play-in, have mistaken that for thinking that I thought all the play-in games were going to be bad. That's not what I said. And I'll say the same thing applies to college football playoff expansion. I don't like that this is happening. It doesn't mean I think the games are going to be bad. All right? Because I'll give you last night, Chicago, Atlanta as evidence. Oh, hey, you guys are both almost 10 under. Cool. Do you want to still keep playing? See if you have a chance to be in the playoffs? As if the last 6 months don't mean anything? Yeah. I think that's stupid, okay? But I had fun watching that game because we got to see Kobe White. 40-22 after the first quarter. Atlanta goes on a 20-7 run with Trey not in the game. I think we have to talk about Trey, but what I'm not going to do is, because he's coming off the finger injury, I don't want to bring up the negative stuff. Like, I'm not going to bring up that whole run happened with Trey on the bench. I'm not going to bring up that he went for a steal late that made no sense, that led to a wide open three, and then he brought the ball down at the other side and threw a shot clock grenade pass behind his back to DeJounte Murray, where DeJounte got it back with 2 minutes with defenders on him with no chance to get the ball off, and was so mad about not getting the shot off, he actually stepped towards Trey in an aggressive way, and then found a way to control his emotions and stop himself mid-stalk towards Trey Young. I'm not going to bring up that he tried to initiate a foul off a bullshit three-point attempt and was so short it was like a punt, and then stopped to yell at the ref, didn't get back on defense, and then his guy went down and dunked. I'm not going to bring up the other shot clock grenade that he threw to Wesley Matthews. There's just a lot of stuff that I'm not going to bring up because I don't think it's fair, because he was coming back from an injury. He clearly couldn't shoot last night. There was a point where I was like, well, hey, if your hand is this messed up, maybe you stop shooting, which he did in the fourth quarter, took a couple shots there late, because this is somebody coming back, playing only 3 games and struggling from the floor before last night's play-in game, where his shooting splits were 58 and 46%. Not going to do any of those things. Because I want to talk about Coby White. 42 points, 15 to 21, 0 turnovers. Felt pretty good about my vote for most improved player, because he looked like, and they called on the broadcast last night, Ryen Russillo, RJ. Good stuff. Russillo being like, you draft this guy, you draft him kind of high. And you're like, all right, maybe he's a rotation guy. Or maybe post Levine and DeRozan not having it, he is a matchup nightmare now with the ball in his hands. You want to talk about like getting free? I'm not going to call anything Kyrie, okay? Because nothing's Kyrie. Smaller player getting to the rim. There's some stuff there with Coby where it's terrific. And that's on top of Caruso getting stepped on by Andre Drummond, who I think will be the floor for our Hall of Fame debates when his final numbers are done. But I loved seeing this from Coby White, and they're still alive. And I just think that Chicago fan base is incredible. However, we know Caruso, after getting stepped on, TBD. We know Butler's gone now, unless Miami finds a way to, like, I don't know, beat Chicago, beat Boston without Butler. Giannis, that one doesn't feel great. Embiid just doesn't look healthy. Zion isn't playing against Sacramento. I bring this injury history stuff up every year because we all need to be reminded of it. Like, we haven't even started really the playoffs yet, and we're down a bunch of dudes. New Orleans, Sacramento, you want to talk film grind, one of the rare discoveries where I go, this definitively will happen because of what I've seen in this matchup. Pelicans dominating the Kings. Now, no Zion. I don't know. A few minutes on Golden State before we say goodbye. What were the other ways that this was going to end? There's no good endings. And I don't mean like in everything, but I kind of do. Their good ending is actually winning a title in 22. That's actually a good ending. Because for most teams, it's like, okay, your 15 to 19 run, that's kind of your run. And maybe there's a late conference finals or some terrible upset in the second round, but like that's kind of over. Their 22 title is their extra title. I think their 4 overall titles is the right number, because 15 feels like they got lucky on the injury side. 19, they got incredibly unlucky on the other side. Toronto has probably my least favorite championship of the last 2 decades with that one. So the number of 4 seems right. The Pats number seems right. I think Bama deserves one more because it felt like they were a little unlucky when there were chances to be lucky or unlucky. So Golden State at 4, I think it's the right number. If Draymond doesn't get suspended this season, doesn't play in only 55 games, they probably find a way to win 3 to 4 more games and end up in the 6th seed. But then what? Are you picking them against Minnesota? I'm not. I don't think I'd pick them against Denver. I don't even know if I pick them against LA. Pelicans is a coin toss. Phoenix is probably a coin toss. Dallas, if you maybe wanted to zag because you didn't feel like they were going to be exposed as much on the side thing, and maybe you could do the same thing with OKC. The point is, in this West this year, even if they were a 5 or a 6 seed, I'm not sure how many teams I was actually going to pick them against. So they can lose in in embarrassing fashion to Sacramento on the road as the 10 seed, the exit, right? A 24-point loss, a 10 seed. You're like, that's how this team is going to go out. It's like Kennard shooting Omar. You're like, that's how it ends. Like, it needs a better ending. No, I think this is about right because this is a 10-year thing. And you want to get into like people not liking them. Nobody's going to, if you don't like something or someone, you're not then going to like be bummed out when it's over. You're going to be happy. And that was the whole point of not liking them in the first place. But the Bulls never gave you this chance. Like Jordan, it was just gone. It was done. The Bulls haters didn't even get a chance to hate. It's like, no, we're not even going to let you do that. The Lakers lost the finals to the Pistons in 2004, and then they didn't even make the playoffs the next year. You know? So when I look at Golden State, it's like, what did you think you were supposed to be able to do? What did you think that you were like? Why did you think you were going to be? You already were different with this extended run. So, yeah, maybe it feels worse or looks a little worse because it's a 10 seed and you got smoked and Sacramento was great in that game. But, like, is it more respectful for you just lost in a 3-6 matchup? We knew it was over. We knew it was over for a while, and very few teams get to extend it out even as far as they did. And I think that's more important than what we saw 2 nights ago.